Good evening, and welcome to tonight's lecture. It is a fact that people often take arguments and claims more seriously or less seriously, depending on where they come from, depending on who is speaking. For example, there is a well-known problem with doctors not listening to women. You may have heard about this. Doctors may not take what they say seriously, prescribe them with antidepressants when what they really need is pain medication, or even consider them hysterical, which is an outdated medical term that basically means women are crazy. You can look that last one up. I wish I was joking. Now, I had a close encounter with this phenomenon myself. My girlfriend, sadly, has a chronic illness that she has struggled with her whole adult life. She has also struggled with getting treatment for it because of the aforementioned disability of being a woman. As a result of this, she has gradually gotten a lot more sick than she needs to be. Well, I mean, nobody needs to be sick. I mean, her life has been basically ruined by complications that could easily have been prevented if she had just gotten the treatment that she needed a long time ago. Early in our relationship, I brought her to my doctor thinking that might help. What happened was my doctor blew off what she said, but suddenly it changed her tune when I repeated exactly the same thing a few moments later. This is, unfortunately, a very common story. And I feel like it's probably worth mentioning that my doctor was herself a woman. So, eh, sense where it be? On the other hand, in some circles, we're told that people like me should not speak over minority voices when it comes to issues like racism and sexism. Issues like the problems that women experience in accessing good health care. Imagine that you repeat what I just said to your friend, and she says, uh, well, in this example, I guess you're a man and your friend is a woman. Your friend might say, why, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. What do you do then? Because there are women that say that. Is it possible that you should never give more or less credence to what someone says based on who they are, based on their membership in an identity group, or based on specific things about them as an individual, such as their education level? For that matter, why are you listening to me? Have you met me? I'm very strange. This question of the person making a particular argument in evaluating the merits of that argument is what we're going to be talking about tonight. We will also be discussing some very common fallacies having to do with the relevance of the arguer to the argument. Consider the following two arguments. Number one, Nobel Prize winning chemist Linus Pauling recommends the use of megadoses of vitamin C to prevent colds. If you want to prevent colds this winter, you should follow his advice. Number two, it is true that many medical researchers have testified that cannabis is non-addictive and harmless, but these same researchers have admitted to using cannabis themselves. We should certainly disregard their views. Do you find these arguments to be persuasive? Why or why not? None of them are citing actual evidence. Instead of evidence, what they're doing is they are talking about people, right? The first one, they're trying to persuade you to take mega doses of vitamin C because Nobel Prize winning chemist Linus Pauling says so. And the second one says that we should disregard the views or the research of some unnamed medical researchers because they have used cannabis. Again, pointing to the people rather than evidence. So what these two arguments have in common is that they both judge a position or ask you to accept or reject a position. They both judge a position by pointing to the person or people who hold the position. The first argument points to the person as a reason to support a position. Why should you take megadoses of vitamin C? Because Linus Pauling says so, and he's a Nobel Prize winning chemist. The second one points to the person or persons as a reason to reject the position. We shouldn't listen to the views of these researchers about cannabis because they're cannabis users themselves. Well, in practice, sometimes pointing to the person making an argument or accepting something on the word of a particular person is acceptable. Sometimes the person making the argument or the person in the argument is relevant. Sometimes they're not relevant. So today we're going to understand how to tell the difference. Okay, so the most basic way that a person can be pointed to in an argument is by appealing to them as an authority. Now, I don't want to confuse you. Appeal to authority is the name of a logical fallacy, but that's confusing because an appeal to an authority is not always a fallacy. It's not always illegitimate. In practice, we rely upon authorities all the time. That's because in our society, there is just so much that you need to know, you can't possibly know it all. No one person can know it all. For example, if your car breaks down, who do you go to? It's more fun if you guys participate.
A car shop, repair shop?
A repair shop, sure. And the people at the car repair shops are mechanics. If it hurts when you pee, who do you go to? Do you go to a car mechanic?
To the doctor?
Yeah, you go to a doctor. It wouldn't make very much sense to go to a doctor about your car or to go to a mechanic about your pee, would it? This tells us something important. We rely upon authorities when the authorities possess expert knowledge in the relevant field. This is what we do in normal life, and it makes sense. It makes sense because, like I said a moment ago, you can't know everything, and we live in a society where we have authorities. We also have a system of certification for authorities so that we can know that they know what they're talking about. They know what they're talking about because they have education in the relevant field or they've done research in the relevant field. Reliance upon authorities isn't supposed to be a substitute for thinking. Theoretically speaking, the authority should be able to explain to us why we should make the choice that they're advising us to do, or why they hold the position that they do. Going to an authority is a sort of a shortcut toward finding out something for yourself. Most of us don't have time to go to medical school for 4 years, so luckily we go to other people who can do that for us. Okay, so that's what happens when we're appealing to authority correctly. That's what happens when we're doing it the right way. But sometimes we listen to authorities when we shouldn't, when they don't have expertise in the relevant field. You know, when people listen to their ministers or preachers to tell them who to vote for in an election, or when we decide which beverage to drink because a certain sports star happens to like that beverage. In this case, there's either no relevant expertise at all in the case of what beverage you should drink, or the person that we're relying upon as an authority doesn't possess authority in the relevant field. Religious figures are not experts on politics or economics or anything, nor are doctors and chemists, by the way, are also not experts in medicine. I'm referring to the first of the two examples that we started with. However, in practice, we do sometimes listen to people's opinions and follow their advice when they don't have expert knowledge in the relevant field. There's two reasons why this happens. The first one is because of something called the halo effect. Nothing to do with the game, obviously. The halo effect works like this. We can confuse expertise in one area with expertise in another. Let's go back to the first example on the first slide with the Nobel Prize winning chemist. All right, well, apparently this Linus Pauling guy is pretty smart, so that means that people are going to be more inclined to listen to him. However, his expertise is in chemistry, and the topic is what do we want to call the topic? Do we want to call it medicine? Do we want to call it health? It's about using megadoses of vitamin C to prevent colds. Is that a medical topic? Is it a health topic? Is it a dietary supplement topic? I don't know. But whatever you call it, being an expert in chemistry does not make you an expert in that field. It's something which is maybe distantly related, I suppose. I feel like this is an example where someone could easily be confused by the halo effect, because not only is it a smart person, and also mega doses of vitamin C sounds like it might have something to do with chemistry, but I mean, chemistry doesn't have anything to do with health, so definitely not an expert in the relevant field, but it's easy to see how somebody could get confused and think that he is. So the second way in which this happens has to do with our emotional needs. We like to be like people that we admire. So when a famous person endorses a product, it tends to make us more favorably inclined toward that product. We know this works. We know this works at least some of the time, because otherwise advertising companies would not pay sports stars and pop stars to endorse their products. They spend a lot of money on it, and advertising people know what they're doing. I suppose they have expertise in advertising. So in the first case of the halo effect, we just get a little bit confused because we mistake having authority in one area for just having authority generally, I suppose. And the second one is more of a form of emotional manipulation. So I started off by saying that sometimes we should accept an appeal to authority. Sometimes an appeal to authority is legitimate, and sometimes it isn't. How do we tell the difference? So this is how you tell the difference between when you should accept an appeal to authority and when you shouldn't. You should accept it when 3 conditions are fulfilled. And I'll read them out to you. The first condition is that the field under discussion in the argument must be a field in which it is possible to have expertise. which is a way of saying shouldn't be a matter of opinion. It should be a field where there's actual research and actual established facts. The second condition is that the person being cited is a recognized expert in that field. And the third condition is there is widespread agreement among experts in the field on the particular claim being cited. The third one is the most complicated one, and a lot of people don't mention it when they teach the fallacy of appeal to authority or when you should accept appeals to authority, but I happen to think that it's quite important. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you a bunch of short arguments in which people are appealed to as authorities, and I'm going to ask you, well, what we are going to apply the conditions to decide whether or not we should accept that appeal to authority. Oh, FYI, all of these are real. Like all of these are real people who are the people that the examples say that they are. Jan Narbeson, professor of philosophy at the University of Waterloo, says that we have no moral obligations to animals, so I suppose using them in scientific research is okay. The first criterion is the field under discussion a field in which it is possible to have expertise. Well, what is the field? He says we have no moral obligations to animals, so I suppose using them in scientific research is okay. Who can tell me what the field under discussion is?
Is it philosophy?
Yes, that's correct. It is philosophy. I would also have accepted moral philosophy. Is this a field in which it is possible to have expertise?
Maybe. Possible.
Maybe. Okay. Well, I alluded to something earlier. I said that people who have expertise normally have some sort of certification. So Jan Narbeson, who is a real person, is a professor of philosophy at the University of Waterloo. So if he is a professor of philosophy, then I think we have to accept that this is a field in which it's possible to have expertise. Because otherwise, you know, we wouldn't award doctorates in something if it wasn't possible to have expertise. So the first criterion is fulfilled. It is a field in which it is possible to have expertise. The second criterion, does this particular person possess expert knowledge in the relevant field? So are they an authority in the field under discussion? Yes or no?
Yes. A professor?
Yes. Yeah. Jan Narbeson is a professor of philosophy. The field is philosophy. So he does possess authority or expertise in the relevant field. The third criterion is there is widespread agreement among experts in the field on the particular claim being cited. So is there widespread agreement among philosophers that we have no moral obligations to animals? Yes or no?
No.
No, that's correct. Yes, and it is clear that philosophers do not agree about this, just as they do not agree about many other things. In the first example, first criterion was met, the second criterion was met, the third criterion was not met, and we only accept an appeal to authority when all three criteria have been met. All three of them have to be met. Here there was only two, so no, we would not accept this appeal to authority. We would not take it on the word of Professor Jan Narbeson that using animals in scientific research is okay. Second example, according to famous astronomer Carl Sagan, the universe is approximately 14 billion years old. Luckily, the example tells you that he's a famous astronomer. Okay, what is the field under discussion?
The field is astronomy or
Yeah.
science? The field is astronomy, yes. Don't say science. Science is way too broad. Yeah, the field is astronomy. So is astronomy a field in which it is possible to have expertise?
Yeah.
Its first condition is fulfilled. Second condition, is the person being cited a certified expert or recognized expert in that particular field? The answer is yes, because like it tells you. I know, like, I keep telling you that you shouldn't believe everything that you read, but you know, if in an example, I tell you that if the person is an astronomer, then for the purpose of the example, just believe me. Carl Sagan is, or rather was, an astronomer. So the second condition is met. The third condition is there widespread agreement on experts in the field of astronomy on the age of the universe? Yes or no? I understand if you maybe don't know, but the answer to the question is yes. The current estimate is 13.8 billion years old, and the claim is that it's approximately 14 billion. So 13.8 is approximately 14 billion. So yeah, there is widespread agreement among astronomers on the age of the universe. It's not a controversial thing. But I understand if you didn't know that. Okay, so wait. So we had three criteria. So one, yes, astronomy is a field in which it's possible to have expertise. Two, the person is a recognized authority in astronomy. Three, there is widespread agreement. So all three criteria are fulfilled. So that means that this is a legitimate appeal to authority and you should accept it. John Edward is a famous psychic. If he says people can talk to the dead, I believe him. What is the field under discussion? Well, if you can't even think of what the field is, that might be a clue that it isn't the sort of field in which it's possible to have expertise. We could throw some possibilities out there: paranormal phenomena, psychic research, parapsychology, maybe. It looks like it has already failed to meet the first criterion. This isn't a field in which it's possible to have expertise because psychics aren't real. So we would not accept this appeal to authority because it doesn't even meet the first criterion. It doesn't meet the first criteria. If it's not a field in which it's possible to have expertise, then the answers to 2 and 3 are definitely going to be no. And even if they weren't no, you need to meet all 3 criteria. So this is not a legitimate appeal to authority. Next, feminist author Catherine McKinnon argues that pornography is harmful to women, so it should be banned. Okay, what is the field under discussion? Yeah, again, we could answer it in different ways. I mean, like, the topic is whether or not something should be censored. I mean, you could say the topic is pornography, but a better answer would be the question of whether something should be censored, which is like, is that a legal question? Is that a political question? Is that a moral question? We're not really sure. Is it a field in which it is possible to have expertise? Well, it's possible to have expertise in law, and it's possible to have expertise in moral philosophy, and I forgot what the second one was. Oh, politics. And it is possible to have expertise in politics. Sometimes we call that political science, even though it's not a science, which is confusing. I'm going to say yes, it is a field in which it is possible to have expertise. Oh, also, I would have accepted the answer feminism as a field, because this is actually an area of research, but we don't award PhDs in it. Second criterion, is the person being cited a recognized expert in the field under discussion?
Yeah, she's an author.
Okay, She's an author. She's an author, meaning that she has published books. Let's move on to number 3. Is there widespread agreement among experts in the field of, let's say, feminism on the claim pornography is harmful to women or whether it should be banned? Either one. Is there widespread agreement among experts in the particular field? Okay, the answer is no. There is not widespread agreement. It is actually possibly the most hotly debated topic among feminists and has been for the past 30 years. Also, number 2, I don't think that going purely by the information that we're given, I don't think that the person being cited is a recognized expert in the field. It says feminist author. It doesn't say feminist professor, doesn't say that she has a PhD. It means that she has published books. Lots of people have published books, but that doesn't mean that they're experts. So I would say that condition number 2 is not met. Person is not a recognized expert, going by the information that we have. It wouldn't be a bad idea if you came across this on an assignment or something to actually research the person and find out if they are a certified expert. And if you did Google Catherine McKinnon, you would find that she is a journalist and is not somebody who's a recognized expert in a scholarly field. So this is not a legitimate appeal to authority. You should not accept this claim on the word of this person. Next example. Albert Einstein was an atheist. If a brilliant man like him says there is no God, he's probably right. What is the field under discussion?
Religion.
Sure, religion. Is that a field in which it is possible to have expertise?
Maybe.
I don't think it's possible to have expertise in religion.
Well, you can have expertise in knowing about religions, as topics of research. You can be an expert in the text and interpretations of the text of a particular religion, or maybe all religions. I don't know. Probably not all of them, but in more than one. So let's say it is a field in which it is possible to have expertise. So I'm gonna say it meets criteria number 1. Number 2.
But
Go ahead. No, please. I love it.
I was gonna say Einstein was a scientist, not a religious expert.
Exactly. So you were just answering question number 2. Is he a recognized expert in that field? No. Albert Einstein was a physicist. He was not an expert in religion, and so we would not accept him as an authority on this topic. Incidentally, another answer that I would have accepted, probably a better answer to like what is the field, is metaphysics. But most people don't even know what metaphysics is. It's a field of research in philosophy. So, answering the question religion is fine, but FYI, the question of whether or not there is a God is something that people argue about and maybe research in metaphysics, which is a subfield within philosophy. And you probably won't be surprised to learn that there is not widespread agreement among metaphysicians whether or not there is a God. Moving on. Philip E. Johnson, a leader of the creation science movement, says that the evidence for Darwin's theory of evolution is weak. Perhaps there's more to creationism than people think. What is the field under discussion? Well, it says that this Johnson guy is a leader of the creation science movement. So is creation science a field in which it is possible to have expertise? Could you have a PhD in it? It doesn't
No.
always have to be a PhD, of course. No, you couldn't have a PhD in it. There's no system of certification for it because it is not a real field. It's just something that people like Philip Johnson made up because they want to take over the world. You think I'm joking? That's not actually a joke. You can Google this guy. You can Google creation science movement. You might want to Google wedge strategy. They actually do want to take over the world, or at least the United States, you know, which is close enough, and turn it into a Christian theocracy. They are very scary people. So that one fails under the first criterion. That makes it easy. We don't even have to move on to the next two. Do I have more examples? No, I don't have more examples. How do we know when somebody is an expert? I think that came out in the discussion. Our society, like I said earlier, relies upon experts. Our society wouldn't function without experts. And so we have a certification system for every field in which it is possible to have expertise. So if it's a field of scholarly research or a scientific field, it would be like a PhD. Lawyers have law degrees. Car mechanics have, I don't actually know what their certification thingy is called, but they definitely, there's definitely a system of certification, and it's a, you know, something that they get to put up on their wall. So that's how we know when someone is an expert. They are certified by some sort of body which is able to give that certification. So for instance, if they have a PhD, it needs to be a PhD from a recognized university. And if it's not a recognized university, and then it isn't actually allowed to award PhDs. So I was careful with each of the examples that I gave you to tell you whether or not the person had expertise or whether they were certified. So if you're doing this like on an exam and they don't say, what do you do? Well, you can always look them up. I guess exam was not really a good example there because they don't usually let you look up stuff on the internet in an exam. Well, I don't know, let's say you're researching an essay, or let's say this is a completely non-school related thing, you know, and you really do want to know if you should take the authority of some guy on whether it's all right to use animals in scientific research, or you really do, you're having a heated argument. You're having a heated argument with your cousin about the age of the universe because you're very emotionally invested in the age of the universe. Well, you know, then you can look up this Carl Sagan guy and find out whether he has expertise in the relevant field. In fact, I highly recommend that you look up Carl Sagan anyway. He was an interesting character. If that doesn't work, if you are in an exam and you can't do research, and the information that you're provided doesn't tell you, and you don't know on the basis of your general knowledge, then you assume that they are not an expert. So in that case, the second criterion would not be met, and you would not accept them as an authority. This brings us to the third criterion: is there or is there not widespread agreement in the relevant field on this particular question? This one is the most difficult one because normally you would need some sort of knowledge of the field to know whether or not there's widespread agreement on a particular point. Sometimes you do because you have like general knowledge. For example, my PhD is in philosophy, but I have a moderate amount of general knowledge in astronomy and also chemistry and also biology and psychology and actually most scientific fields because I study science as a hobby, but not professionally. But you, or most of you, I suspect, are not me. You're also not overeducated like me. So what do you do if you can't rely upon your general knowledge? Well, again, you can do research if you have the opportunity to do research. If you don't have opportunity to do research, or you try Googling the topic, because remember, it's a question of whether or not there's widespread agreement in the field. Actually, maybe I should pause a bit here and talk about why I think this third criterion is important, that there's widespread agreement. This has to do with writing papers. So in this course and other courses that I've taught, students will be making arguments and essays, and they will be appealing to authorities. And so what they'll do is they'll find some expert in a field, or they will find some, like somebody who's published something in a scholarly journal and who agrees with their claim, and then they will cite that person as if that was support for their claim. So, such and such says this, so you should believe it. And that's not exactly wrong. It's not exactly wrong, especially if the person that you cite is an authority in that field. But the problem is, if it's a field in which there isn't widespread agreement, then somebody else can just find a different expert in the same field who says the opposite and cite them. And then what do? You're it's sort of he said, she said, or they said situation. Appeal to authority doesn't work if there's not widespread agreement in the field, because if it's just as easy to find authorities for two opposite positions in the same field, then appealing to authority really isn't working, is it? That means that you can't take the word of an expert in the field if experts disagree. So that's why I think this is important. And I want you to keep this in mind when you write your argumentative essays. So if you make a particular claim and you want to support that claim, like I say, use citations all the time, but be careful how you use citations. Don't rely upon the word or the opinion of an expert in the field unless you have good reason to think that there's a sort of widespread agreement, that there's a sort of consensus view in the field, and you need to be more or less sure that it isn't a topic of debate in the field. So that is why I want you to apply that criterion. That's why I think it's important. So let's say you are trying to decide whether or not there's widespread agreement in a field on a particular thing. And let's say you're writing an exam, so you can't look stuff up. What do you do? Well, I have this helpful list here on the slide. This is a list of different fields of research. And it's not an exhaustive list, but there's enough there that I feel like you can get a rough idea of where stuff fits in. So I have the list of fields arranged in order from where there's the least amount of agreement among experts, generally speaking. So it's not about any particular question. It's just in some fields, there tends to be more consensus than there isn't. What was I even trying to do with that sentence? In some fields, there tends to be widespread agreement on most questions or most topics, or the most important topics or something. And in some fields, there tends not to be widespread agreement. And the way it normally goes is the more the field is about facts that can be verified by looking at evidence, then the more likely there is to be widespread agreement. Let's go through the list. So philosophy, which is my field of expertise, is the field in which there is the least amount of widespread agreement. There is widespread agreement on some topics, like these fallacies that I'm teaching you that's widely accepted. But many other things, there is not widespread agreement. Basically, if somebody is pointing to a philosopher as an authority in an argument and you don't really have anything else to go on, I would say do not accept that person as an authority, or do not accept the claim merely on the word of the expert. And likewise, don't do that on a paper. So don't cite the opinion of or view of a philosopher in support of some claim that you make in an essay, because there's liable to not be widespread agreement. What you can do, however, is you can cite the argument that the expert gives, because philosophers are all about making arguments. You can still use experts in your paper even when there's not widespread agreement in the field on the particular topic, but you can't just give the opinion or the point of view of the person. You have to cite their whole argument. Sociology, I really don't know what to say here. Sociology is a field where there's not widespread agreement. History, you'd think that there would be more widespread agreement in history because it's all based on texts and stuff that's been written down, but there's a surprising amount of disagreement as well. It has to do with the interpretations of the text and things like the fact that just because somebody wrote something down in a book about something that happened 1400 years ago, that doesn't mean what they wrote down was actually true. Economics. You know, if I had my time back, I would put economics above history on this list. I think there's actually even less agreement in the field of economics than there is in the field of history. Economics pretends to be an empirical discipline. You go and ask an actual economist, you know, and they'll say that it's more like fortune telling. Psychology. All right. Well, now we're into the sciences, the so-called social sciences. So psychology is a science, but it's a very young science, and it is a science in which there's probably the least amount of agreement among any of the sciences, which is because people are very complicated things, and they're difficult to understand because they're so complicated. There's a lot of different theories in psychology, and those theories, you know, disagree on many fundamental claims. Biology has more widespread agreement than psychology. So by the time we've gotten down here on the list, we're getting to the point where most of the time you probably should accept the claims of the experts. So I'm saying biology, yeah, probably, if you don't know, this is not something that you can check, if it's a claim being made in biology, probably you should assume that there's widespread agreement. Chemistry, yeah, there's normally widespread agreement on almost everything in chemistry. Astronomy, about the same as chemistry. And physics, well, physics is the paragon of the physical sciences. All of the other sciences are jealous of physics and wish that they were physics, because physics is the field of scientific research where it's easiest to make verifiable observations, to make measurements. Also, physics lends itself to mathematization, which is why, incidentally, I'm just sticking physics and math together, because math is basically physics is basically like applied math. And although math is not technically a science, math is classified as an art rather than a science, it is still an area where there is a lot of widespread agreement. So how do you use this list? TLDR, if it's biology or further down the list, assume that there's going to be widespread agreement. If it's psychology or further up on the list, assume that there isn't going to be widespread agreement. I hope that helps.